Again, very good. Picking up at the same day. Frozen,
Frozen. It's frozen with love.
that's the difference.
What am I doing? Yeah. I need to make this for everyone. Good. People are coming in. Good. Hey, you guys want challah?
They're trying to
Oh,
get
well.
the system. It's on top of
Okay.
the table.
You know who disappeared?
Summer.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah, I was thinking that.
You haven't heard from her?
That's because it's fall.
Did she come?
She
That's the last.
maybe she like Caleb already became a real Jew even before her conversion.
Is she going through it?
I don't know.
I don't know too.
It's John called.
I recently became a real Jew. She's not coming anymore.
There must be something going around because I was thinking about her today too.
Who are we talking about?
Summer.
Is it Jennifer, who's the twins' mom?
Her name is Summer.
Jessica.
Jessica Harper.
Oh.
She works with the
She
Innocent
gave 3
Project.
maybes
And
for
she-
tomorrow.
Sally signed on that she was coming.
Oh, yeah, Sally.
She heard about this.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice to see her. Yeah.
I'll check one.
Wine or grape juice? Grape juice. Give the man grape juice.
Hold on.
And some challah. Hello, people.
Membership.
Starting soon. Anybody man for more challah?
We went through that, didn't we?
I'm hungry. I had kasha for lunch.
What's that?
Kasha?
It's
Buckwheat.
buckwheat groats.
Oh, this kasha?
Eastern European Jewish food.
It's a failure.
Eastern
Wine?
European Jewish.
You
Yeah.
take the buckwheat groats,
Mhm.
you
Want one?
I'll wine a little
beat
bit.
an egg,
Mhm.
and you
What?
slowly,
Egg? I just buckwheat, water, salt. And then you put cream on top and fried onions.
Oh, well, sometimes that happens.
a different country, I guess.
Oh, clearly. We had no chickens. We're too poor.
But you have cream. You found it.
Smetana, you know?
Anyhow, one way or another, you cook
Have a prayer
these
book for me?
grains.
Yeah, they're in there.
You either cook them
How are you,
with,
Mr. President?
Well,
cooking them over
not doing very
low
Theo's not
heat,
coming.
so it doesn't
Theo is
fry
online.
the egg. And then you
Oh,
put the
so
water
he's
in,
making music.
or you do it this way.
Online. He's at his home. He's not feeling
Get
well.
him at health food
Yeah, what I
store.
like at the dinner theater is the.
You can roll, man.
Let's roll.
I always eat there.
Look at you looking like a Jew. Look at you looking like a Jew as well, kind of, most of the time. Hang in there, fellow Israelites. Take care of you. Okay. See if I can make this work.
We'll get the other one. Take the other microphone back to you.
This is good, I think.
I don't know. Oh, I think you haven't turned it on.
It's not turned on.
No.
I thought you were gonna do that.
Sorry. Here's your thing that they did. Now the new one doesn't send it in anymore. Let's see if that works. See if it works.
Well, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm glad to see you all. All of you who are here, the youth. And, it's sad, there was there's a period, maybe 150 years ago, when there were lots of changes in society. The Industrial Revolution, all of a sudden you have a trip, people living in the villages the same way they have always lived. It was very difficult to get to anywhere else. Now all of a sudden there is a train, there's a telegraph, there's radio, and there was a trend among Hasidic rabbis to help people make lessons out of objects of modernity. Just make this brief, like, what can you learn from a train? There are many lessons, but one of them is because of one moment you can lose everything. Because if you don't show up in time to the train. So then last week something happened here, it was very, very nice. And I kept thinking about it the whole week. And I point out, not because I'm trying to encourage anybody else to mimic Pam, far from, but because it was a great lesson. So she gave me a gift for my birthday. And what was great about the gift, beyond, the fact that Pam showing her love and generosity for me, it's a usual, happens all the time, far more than I deserve. But this one was really, really special on many accounts. Because, first of all, I like books, and then was about the two things I like, food and travel. It was like the ideal, it clearly, what made it special, I get gift stuff all the time, but what's really special is she really thought about what would make me happy, or maybe she saw the stuff and said, oh, this really makes me think of Jacques. And it's interesting because, and I kept thinking then, where in Jewish tradition do you find a similar lesson? And I've been thinking a lot about this. And I thought that, as a Latin American male, I have a great deal of interest in the whole idea of barbecue, of grilling. And in Latin, and in the temple in Jerusalem, there are different kinds of sacrifices. Some you made for yourself, some you made for God. The one you made for God was horrendous. It's crap. You take an animal, the whole animal, you burn the animal with everything inside, and you burn it till the end. You may think, what the hell? There's some of them you make the animal and you skin, and then you grill, and then God gets the smoke, and you get the meat. So it was a good deal. But the one that was really, especially for God, you burn everything. What you may not know is that when you burn everything, it tastes horrendous. When you burn the cow's leather, it tastes like the worst thing I've ever seen. How do I know? Because in Uruguay, it's a very common thing. If you have in the interior, if you have a wedding, then it's called asado con cuero. Asado is barbecue grill con cuero with the leather. And what they do is that they make the meat, and instead of taking the leather out, they leave it with the leather, and they grill, and then they remove the leather, and they take it out. And by the way, it doesn't change the taste. What it does, however, is in the past, I don't know today, the leather was by far the most valuable part of the cow. The leather was worth, the meat was worth nothing, and the leather was worth a lot. So much so that people used to kill cows in the fields, skin them, and leave the corpse there to rot. It's just not worthwhile and take it. But the leather was valuable. So when you do asado con cuero, it's to show that you are so rich, that it's such a special occasion that you're willing to burn the best part, which is the leather. But again, it doesn't add any flavor. But back to the sacrifices, it is that, what's the lesson of sacrifice and how does it relate to Pam's gift? Then you give somebody a gift, you give the gift that he wants, not the gift that you want. That was a cool lesson. Authentic again. Now, anybody has anything to share, anything good, anybody has anything good to make anybody else's lives better, anybody corrected actors at a play like I did? Joyce knows.
Well, I want to thank Joyce for advising us to go to see the play that we did off Broadway last night. It was very good, and I was awfully sorry to see so few people there to appreciate it, but it's a wonderful story of the heroes of the Black community and our own American community, Medgar Evers, basically the story of how they got together and communicated and moved on after the heroes had died and created good works, and they communicate together and how to do it. And we need a lot of that. And I appreciate very much her doing that. So that's my good deed was to go, but hers was to suggest we do it. And I think others can, they should, if they can. And I know that we have the Havdalah tomorrow night, but they may have a Sunday performance, do they, Joyce?
Tomorrow night's the last.
Okay. Sorry. Anyway, it's very good. And it'll probably come back in another form because it's a play that's written. But anyway, thank you. We're trying our best to do some good deeds. It's hard to do. And my heart is with our representatives at the Environmental Congress still going on, in hopes that they will get more commitments and get people to participate in the one important effort basically of our time, which is the environmental restoration, or to keep from getting worse in the environment.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Do you have anything to share? No. That being the case, this being, the best of my knowledge, the first Shabbat of the month, we will open. I hope Theo is online with us. He wasn't feeling that well, so I guess if he could stay.
Oh, I see him right there.
Yep, I'm here.
Go ahead.
By the way, are you hearing us okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's do Shalom Aleichem on page 6. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Imelech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, what's going on? Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Imelech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Imelech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzidkem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Imelech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Any volunteer somebody to light Shabbos candles? Jose.
Come, let us welcome Shabbat. May its radiance warm our hearts as we kindle these tapers.
Let it symbol God's presence in our lives. The eternal one of our life and the light of our salvation.
Light is the symbol of the holiness within each of us. The human spirit is the light of God.
Light is the symbol of the Torah's teachings. The commandment is the lamp, the Torah is the lamp.
Light is the symbol of Israel's mission. As it is written, I have made you a covenant people to serve as a light to the nations.
Therefore, in the spirit of our ancient tradition, God unites Israel, all lands and all nations, to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu, v'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed art thou. Oops. We praise our eternal God, creator of the universe, who hallows our lives through laws and ethical teachings. We are mindful of these timeless values as we kindle the lights of Shabbat.
May God bless us with Shabbat. May God bless us with Shabbat holiness. May God bless us with Shabbat peace. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
This being the first service of the month, we turn to page 12 for the first service of service. Creator of the universe, we lift up our hearts to you who made heaven and earth. The infinite heavens and the quiet stars tell of your endless power. We turn from our daily toil, from its difficulties and conflicts, from its clamor and its weariness. We meditate on the serene calm of your presence that pervades all creation, hallowing our lives with the blessing of Shabbat peace.
Source of peace, bless our worship of this Shabbat. Enlighten our eyes to behold your guiding power in all nature. From the most remote star to our innermost soul. Inspire our hearts to love you, to make your will of all of our lives. Grant us comfort in sorrow, strength in trial, the courage to serve you in all our ways. May our words of prayer and our unspoken meditations be acceptable to you, our Creator and Redeemer. Amen.
Come, let us sing unto God. Let us raise our voices in joy to the source of all life.
Let us come into God's presence with thanksgiving. Let our voices ring out a joyful song.
Sing unto the Eternal One. Let us proclaim God's redemptive power from day to day.
Worship the Eternal One in the beauty of holiness. Of all the world give praise to our Creator.
Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the field exult in all that is there.
Let the righteous be glad in God's presence and give thanks for God's constant guidance.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, ועמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ויום איכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב, תהיו אמן. יהי שמרבה מבורך, לעולם לעולמי יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, יתברך ויתרום ויתנשא, Vitada, vitale, vitala, shmer kursham rehu, leila min kol bechata b'shirata, ushbechata v'nechamata, dameron be'alma, be'ru amen.
Now we rise on page 14 for the call to worship the Barichu. Barichu et Adonai Hamorah. Praise the eternal God whom all praise is due. Baruch Adonai Hamorah le'olam v'ayim. Let us praise the eternal God whom all praise is due now and forever.
La 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 la. La 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 la. 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 La 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 la. Baruch et Adonai, Hamevorach. Adonai, Hamevorach, Hamevorach, le'olam va'ed. Hamevorach, Hamevorach, le'olam va'ed.
Page 15. We praise the eternal God, creator of the universe, by whose laws the shadows of evening falls, and the light of each new day is open. In wisdom, you have established the change of times and seasons, and ordered the ways of the stars and the heavenly hosts. You are the creator of heaven and earth, the source of all life. We praise you, eternal God, for the day and its work, and for the night and its rest.
Infinite is your power, and so is so. They sing to the history of our people, Israel. Through laws and ethical precepts, through statutes and ordinances, you have led us the ways of righteousness and brought us to the light of truth. Therefore, our mind values our righteousness. We will meditate on the Torah's teachings, finding within it inspiration and guidance for us. May your love and depart from our hearts. Praise you, God. You have revealed the love of our people.
Together we affirm on top of page 17, Shema Israel, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the eternal God, the eternal God. Please, I need the people who are on Zoom with yourselves. This is not. Who's that?
¿Y por qué no vas hoy?
No.
Mute yourself, Brenda.
Brenda, mute yourself. Can we ban her from Zoom?
No. Hay urgencia cerca de tu casa, hay un lugar. Y Mozana, si trabaja Mozana con Erika.
This is intermission time, apparently.
Ya.
Yes.
Jacques me está llamando.
Oh my God.
¿Aló?
Dá para você colocar o teu microfone no mudo? Tudo que você está falando está me escutando aqui. Obrigado por ter.
Isso estava no mudo.
Luckily, mother, there's only one. Theo, give us some Shema.
Israel, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Be seated. We join the Hebrew, page 18. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך
ובכל רודף, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אלוהים מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
You shall love the eternal God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your might. And all these words which I command you on this day shall be upon your heart, shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them diligently unto your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and when you rise up. You shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a symbol before your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house, and upon your gates, and upon your gates, that you may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God, unto your God, unto your God.
Page 20, we continue praying responsibly. The eternal truth is that we worship only one God and there is none else.
Through God's power alone, as our people Israel been redeemed from the hand of oppressors.
Great deeds God has wrought on our behalf and wonder without number. Wonderful.
God has kept us in life, and has not let our people footsteps fall.
The Eternal One was with us during the long years of oppression. Our faith sustained us even when our people suffered the deepest anguish.
Now that we live in this land of freedom, we continue to be faithful to God and teachings of His Torah.
May God's way guide the lives of all people and unite our hearts in friendship.
Sing your praise.
Page 22. Grant, O God, that we may lie down in peace and awaken each morning to renewed life and strength. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Help us to order our life by your counsel and lead us in the path of righteousness. Be a shield about us, fortifying us against hatred and war, pestilence and sorrow.
We praise you, God, whose shelter of peace is spread over us.
On page 24, middle of the page, the people of Israel shall preserve the Sabbath, observe his
Sabbath throughout the generations. Perpetual covenant. It is a bond between God and the people of Israel.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורי עולם. בני ישראל אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורי עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורי עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וירפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורי עולם.
Those who preserve Shabbat and call it a delight will rejoice. The people that hallow Shabbat delight in your goodness. Being pleased with the seventh day, you made it the most precious of days, a day of gratitude for the work of creation.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת. וקדשי שבי שבת, כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ובשמי רצית בו וקידש השבת, חמדת ימים אותו קראת השבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת, זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת.
Now, we continue on page 25 as we rise. Then
Adonai sefatai v'yiftachu fi tahilatecha, eternal God, open my lips, let my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, האלוהיתו הגיבור והנורא, אליהו, אומר חסדים טובים, והונה הכל, וזוכר חסדות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה.
We praise you, God of our mothers and fathers, God of Abraham, God of Sarah, God of all generations. You bestow loving kindness on all your people. You remember the devotion of those who came before us. As you guided our ancestors with love, you offer hope to us, their descendants. You are our creator and helper, our guide and protector. We praise you, eternal God, shield of Abraham and help of Sarah. Together, infinite and
loving kindness, you sustain the world. To the endless flow of your blessings, you preserve our lives. You uphold the fallen and heal the sick. Free and happy and keep faith with your people in death and life. Who is like you on our life and death. We praise you, God, the source of eternal life.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחייך כל אתה רב להושיע, מחלקי חיים בחסד, מחייך הכל ברחמים רבים, עומק נופים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך מביט ומחיה, ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני,
We rejoice that amid the endless desires and struggles of our daily life, Shabbat has been passed down to us as a day of refreshment for the soul. We thank you, God, for all the blessings which you have bestowed on us during the past week, for the preservation of our lives, of our health and our strength, for the joys of home, of love and friendship, for all the good influences that support us in times of trial and turmoil. You bestow upon us the blessings that brighten our days.
In gratitude, we also face the sorrows that cast their shadows over us with courage and faith. In all our experiences, we seek to recognize your guidance and wisdom. May this Shabbat bring rest to every disquieted heart and be a healing balm to every wounded soul.
Endow with a contented spirit. When we pray for new blessings, may we come to you with humility, remembering that we cannot know whether what we seek is really for our good. Help us to find meaning and hope in times of joy and also in times of sadness.
May we remember to join by going thanks to your judgments and fulfill our duties through the goodness of our deeds, and we make our worship truly worthy.
Our God and God of all ages, grant that our worship on this Shabbat may be acceptable to you. Sanctify us to the commandments that we may share in the blessings of the Torah. Teach us to be satisfied with the gift of your goodness and grateful to rejoice in all that you bestow.
Purify our hearts that we may serve you true. Inspire us to preserve the Sabbath as our sacred heritage from generation to generation. That they may rest and joy, peace and comfort for our lives. We praise our God and sanctify Shabbat.
You may be seated. We continue, page 29. We gratefully acknowledge that we are eternal God, preserve our lives, shield our health. We thank God for the grace, the gift of life itself, for our souls that are ever in God's keeping, for the signs of our Creator's presence that we encounter every day. And for God's greatest gifts at all times, morning, noon, and night. Truly our blessings that we have in God's loving kindness never cease. Therefore, we remember our sons in eternal. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, eternal source of peace. and enable our people Israel to be its messenger throughout the world. Bless our country, that it may ever be a pursuer of peace and its advocate in the Council of Nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and harmony among the inhabitants of all lands. Guide virtue in every soul, and may our love for you hallow every home and every heart. We praise you, God, giver of peace. Amen.
Shalom Rava Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Ki Atohu Lechadom Lechol HaShalom. Ki Atohu Lechadom Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Rava Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Bechol benecha uvarech et Amcha Yisrael. Bechol עת ובכל שעה ישמעך. Shalom Rava Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Prior to silent prayer, we come back to prayer books to page 10 for the prayer for those who need of healing. Page 10. Prayer invites God's presence to lift our spirits. It allows the blessings and gift of hope to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. Shabbat, we pray for the following members of the congregation, or friends, relatives of members of the congregation in need of healing. Gary Kashner, Marvin Aaron, Mike Herman, Wayne Owen, Martha Katz, Louisa Anna Bergson, who's the mother of Dr. Bergson, Ray Barker, Hawk Tomei, and Lily Montgomery, my friend Robert Blau, my friend Sergio Benny Luftiglas, for Pat, for Andy Beckler, Roseanne Du, Bryce Clark, Colin Charles, and Anna Jackson. And anybody else?
Yeah, beautiful.
For Lou, Connie and Frank, for Jennifer, and for Sarah and Fred.
Donna Vestal and Martin, Roy Wenzel and family, Howard Hughes, Walter, Jennifer Borgata, Blair Steves.
Maria
Morrow and Ms. B. Mindful.
Anybody else?
James Howell.
Anybody online has any names? And continue.
We pray for all people who are with us hour, for his sickness and want, for his distress of body and spirit. We name in our hearts those who are dear to us, in whose pain we feel pain. But let them know your help and feel your presence, realizing that they are alone.
May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Yisheb Elohim Oteinu, Ekol Bracha Lavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Now we pause for a moment of silent prayer, using the words of our hearts and prompters of those to be found on page 31. So one of the greatest lines in the Torah, I think, comes in this parsha, Toldot, the sixth one in the Torah. It is the hands, or the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And I don't know, anybody that doesn't know the story, quickly go over it for you. Or maybe I'll go it on a, try to give a different angle. So basically, the story, the Bible is deeply ironic in its great literature. Because what the Torah says is the firstborn should be the head of the clan. Being firstborn is awesome because you even get more money from your father's estate. But generally, in the Torah, that's the rule. But in the overwhelming majority of the cases, the important child, the one who ends up being the leader, is never the firstborn. And that's the case with Jacob's kids. He has two kids, Esau and Jacob. Esau, I contend, and I'm going to get it. Esau, if he was in our days, Denise will be working with him. He was a special child. He was all full of testosterone. He was all about macho. He was dumb as a rock. And I would even contend he probably maybe the IQ didn't get to 100. Jacob was not much better because he really is presented in the text as being a sissy, a conniving sissy, but sissy nonetheless. Because, while Esau goes there to hunt and to do this, and he gets women, not one but two at the same time. And guys are hero, Superman. Jacob stays home and raises and studies Torah or cooks. And maybe crochets on his spare time. I don't know. It's not very manly guy for sure. It's the thing that this is our ancestor. It's kind of like, the Gentile universities have baseball and hockey teams. Yeshivas have chess teams, or something like that. So basically like that. But then Esau is the firstborn. He's supposed to get the blessing. The blessing would imply the passing of the leadership as the father's getting old. And Rebecca plots with the other son, with Jacob, to steal the birthright from him. Birthright he had actually given to him, but I'll get to that in a minute. And so Esau, Isaac is getting old, he thinks he's going to die, so he tells his son Esau, go there, hunt for me, make me something good to eat, and then I'll give you a blessing. Which is interesting, because nowhere else in the Torah, people trade stuff, which I think is a very interesting sign. I'm going to bring it all together for you in a minute. Then Rebecca herds it, and Jacob here. She gets wool from a sheep. She puts around his arms, and so he would look furry. It's the testosterone thing. And then he makes the food and gives it to the father. And the father says, here's your food, father. And then Isaac says, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And on the surface, what would you understand this to mean? That the voice means the speaking of Jacob's, the good guy, but so you speak nicely, but your hands, the way you act in the world, are the hands of Esau, who was brutish and violent and a bad. There's the good and the bad. So Esau's the bad guy, right? So namely, you speak nicely, but your actions are bad. And by the way, why the hands? Hands are how we impact in the world. That's why when the traditional blessing for when you go eat is to wash your hands, it's not the blessing is not praise are you, the word is netilat yadayim and not rechitzat yadayim. The blessing is not for washing the hands, but for raising the hands. But you're supposed to just raise it. Why? Because that's how you act in the world. So that phrase, the voice is the voice of Jacob, the hands are the hands of Esau, would basically be commanding us to be coherent, to make sure that our actions and our words go together. Okay? Perhaps if you went to a Baptist church, sermon would end here. These people don't get much sophisticated thinking. I would like to bring to you a proof that the Torah is very, very sophisticated literature. That's why it is the Torah. And the lesson, in fact, is exactly the opposite. That it's okay to lie. It's okay to have the voice of Jacob in the hands of Esau sometimes. That your voice and your hands do not always have to match. That telling the truth is not an absolute value. There are occasions where lying is not only permitted but necessary. And the story has to do with trying to understand the story of these two boys, Jacob and Esau. For some reason, Esau is born first. He is born all furry, all red hair, he's all hairy. He's already full of testosterone, even as a baby. And then he's a wild guy. And one of the first stories we hear about him is that he goes out hunting and he has no self-control. Quality of many of the kids that Denise works with share the absolute lack of self-control. So he's hungry, he wants food. The sissy brother, who's sissy but not stupid, is home. He made food, he made some porridge with lentils. And he comes and says, give me some to eat. And he says, because I'm starving. And Jacob says, I won't give it to you for free. I'll give it to you in exchange for your birthright. And now you need to understand what the birthright means is not only you're going to be the head of the clan, but when a guy died, his bills get paid first. If he has more than one wife, the ketubah, the value of the marriage agreement with wives, is paid to the wives, and whatever is left over is state. So let's say he has 9 kids, his wealth was divided in 10, everybody got one, and the firstborn got another one. Okay, so in this case, since there are only 2 kids, Esau sold his birthright, which is in fact a third of his father's wealth, for a plate of lentils. Just showing that he's a kid. I hate to say that, but he doesn't know the value of money. We have one at home who doesn't know the value of money, doesn't understand what money is for. Okay, but he was big and violent. So comes the time that the father needs to give the blessing to the sons. He can't have the firstborn to be the head of the clan. I know a powerful, rich Jewish family here in town who had a bunch of kids, and the firstborn was totally worthless, not worthy of being the CEO of the corporation. And I know the maneuver they had to go through to put the firstborn aside, to let the second one, who definitely was capable of doing it. And Roseanne knows what I'm talking about. So, and yet, they need to create a farce. And I contend that the farce was created here by everybody involved, by Isaac, by Rebecca, and by Jacob, to fool Esau, to do it in a masterful way, to prevent him from going berserk and killing everybody. Okay? Because what happened is, Isaac tells him, get out of the house, go hunt. So he's going to be gone for a while, creating the opportunity for Rebecca to do the trick with the wool. Isaac, even though he was suspicious that the child he was giving the blessing to was not the right child, still gives the blessing to Jacob. And then when Esau shows up, he says, I'm sorry, I just gave the blessing to the other guy. And then it's really, I find it really pathetic and pitiful. If you go home, read the text, because it says, but Father, don't you have a blessing for me? No, he just got royally screwed. I don't have any blessing for him. So the father gives him a that's weapon. So blessing, but it's not the firstborn blessing. And it says that he threw a very harsh cry. And then Jacob has to get the hell out of where he is and run to Padan Aram, because otherwise the brother would have killed him. And only after many years pass, that maybe he's a little calmer, that they figure out they can get together again, and then they embrace. However, so that would be the proof that telling the truth is not always 100% necessary, and that even the people in the story they all don't tell the truth. The only flip side of this story is that the Torah says that Esau emitted a loud and painful cry, because he lost his firstborn bride. And then the rabbis tell us in the commentary that eventually the descendants of Esau will take revenge on the descendants of Jacob. He will then eventually pay for the lives, because they will be attacked by the Moabites are the descendants of Esau. When they are leaving Egypt, they are attacked by the Moabites, and that was like payback of the lie that Jacob told to Esau. But at the end of the day, that's what the story needs to happen. And the bottom line of this whole story is, as I have proven to you, telling the truth may not be always necessarily the best thing to do. Best example is you are hiding some Jews from the Nazis in your basement. Nazis knock at the door and say, "Hi, are you hiding any Jews here?" You have no obligation to say, "Yes, I am." Don't be stupid. Or a policeman stops you and says, "Do you know how fast you are going?" No, you don't have to self-incriminate. Perhaps the great wisdom lies to know what occasions warrant telling the truth and which ones don't. That's it. Anybody else? Complaints, remarks, questions?
I rely on you to teach us when.
When's the line?
Isn't that one of the commandments?
No, it's different. You shall not raise false testimony.
It's the same thing.
Different.
If found out, it's still a lie. Lie is still a lie.
Testimony is different.
So the different, so
Testimony is in court. You give your word, you swear the truth, nothing but the truth. Blah, blah.
so the lesson in this is there are times to tell the truth and times to not.
Say again?
The lesson in this is there are times that you can not tell the truth.
I believe so. That's my interpretation. And again, what you need to do is that you need to go home and read the texts from God and read it carefully. Then you see how many nuances the text has. And especially the Torah, that's a book that's very short in words, how any information they give you is by default considered to be relevant. So the picture that comes out of Esau, even though the text never says, is of a kid who is mentally retarded or something, that is. So that's why he was no good to be the leader. Yes.
So was there some concrete reason why Isaac couldn't rescind what he had given to Jacob? And because Jacob had.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
He could have, maybe he couldn't rescind, but he could do something. He could do better for Esau than he did. If you read the blessing he gives to Esau, is a named blessing.
So
it's because Isaac, because Esau it doesn't work much more.
So you think that in the back of his mind, he didn't really want to.
Somebody is typing and making noise. No, it's my mom is back. I think deep down he did not want it to do. I agree with you.
I thought he didn't know.
I thought he unmute to speak on. I think Isaac knew. That's the thing. Yeah, that's my impression. Because again, I think he was part of the plot. That's my impression.
He didn't want Esau to have a blessing.
Right, but they needed to do it again. What do you do when you have a child who's mentally slow and yet is huge and violent and stronger than anybody else, and you have to kill it? You have to come up with some kind of, to tell the lie in a subtle way.
Rodolfo, mute
yourself.
Rodolfo.
Or I have to kill you. Or I have to
Take away your blessing.
go right now to Ciudad Guzman.
It seems like the bottom line is very important here. Because, well, yeah, always. But then you have to kind of suss out what needs to happen to have a positive outcome at the end.
Right. Yes. Anybody else? Turn now to page 368. And he writes, עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו ליחד את שמו וגם עלינו להאמין.
We offer praise to you, spread out the heavens and establish the air. Your glory is revealed in the heavens above, and your greatness is manifest forever. You are our God, there is none else.
We bow our heads in reverence before the eternal one, source of all life.
אנחנו חורים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Continue.
May the goodness and glory of the ever-living God, we also praise to you at the earth. The holy heavens, the heavens of the earth, the glory of the earth, all people serve the God of righteousness. Forever and evil shall be wedded to earth and goodness. Since the nation of the Lord is like a line, without requiting. And all the governors shall know that you alone every knee shall bend, and every voice be praised. May all created in your image recognize that we are brothers and sisters, so that one in spirit and one in one we may be forever united before you. Then shall your reign be established on earth, and the word of your image shall be fulfilled. The eternal God will reign forever and ever.
On the day the eternal shall be one, and God's name shall be one. Cherished ties are broken, and fond hopes shattered. Only faith and confidence can lighten the heaviness of the heart. The pain of separation is hard to bear. To become despondent from our sorrow will only deepen our grief. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God. Indeed, our grief will have value if it sends us back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are sorrow-stricken. Though absent, the departed still nurture our spirits, teaching us greater patience, faithfulness, and devotion. In the remembrance of their virtues and affections, the best and purest part of their nature lie eternally enshrined. Let us lift our hands in hope and summon our strength to carry on. We dwell in the shelter of the eternal God, who is our refuge and our fortress. Thoughts now come to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, the 6 million who perished in the Shoah, and those of every race, nation, and faith whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. Shabbat, remember everyone who died on account of COVID around the world.
Now 750,000.
Yeah,
In
five,
the
they
US
say
alone.
about 5 million around the world. Anybody has a Shiva, 7-day mourning period? Anybody has a Shloshim, the means?
Me for my wife,
For
my wife, her name is
what?
Kristen Tomei.
Oh, and Dallas laid to rest today.
And as far as your side, by some reason we don't have any. I don't know if anybody has a your side. I don't have your side. The part whom we now remember have entered into the peace of life eternal. They still live on earth in the acts of goodness they perform in the hearts of those who cherish their memory. In the beauty of their lives, abide among us a loving benediction. And now on page 375, join with the ancient word of the Kaddish. Itkadal ve'Itkadal Shemera ve'Alma Dikra Kirtei ve'Alikmote ve'Chaye Kol ve'Yonechon ve'Chaye Adonai Israel V'Agala v'Zman v'Gari v'Yuru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabban V'Barak V'Alam V'Yamaya Itbarak V'Ishtabak V'Itba'al V'Romam V'Yisei V'Itadar V'Talem V'Talas Shmei V'Shacharito Le'Eila Mikol V'Itadar V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Damiram V'Alma V'Yuru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabban Shemaya V'Chaim V'Aleim V'Kol Yisrael V'Yuru Amen. Oseh Shalom V'Rama Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'Yuru Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all more, comfort to all who are buried among us, and let us say, Amen. You can sit it. I want to thank Theo for the music, in spite of being under the weather. It's always on task. I want to thank Roseanne for lighting Shabbat candles. And tomorrow, 6 o'clock, we will have first a presentation, then Havdalah. We're doing it at 6 o'clock because the speaker, who's very interesting, is a friend of mine, Bob Barad, is the guy in charge of the UN food program for Africa. And he happens to be in Lisbon on his way to Brazil, and because Lisbon is 6 hours ahead of us, it'll be like midnight. So I didn't want to impose even more on him So we'll start with him, then we'll do $50, and then we'll go out for dinner.
Yeah, we have to leave the Rolling Hills at 7:15.
Right, so I heard some word about food. Let's not do food, so there's no time for that. Let's
No,
not-
not here.
Yeah,
I just had asked if anybody wanted to bring snacks during it while we're here, but that's perfectly okay.
I think it's, I don't think it's,
Yeah,
no, just no, any place. Anybody, any other announcements? Joyce, tell us about our non-African family. I think Joyce is in cahoots with them to take advantage of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to the hands of Esau.
Well, I feel like one thing I need to learn is to be, more flexible because things kind of twist and turn, change from moment to moment. So far, all the Afghan families, the way we understand it, is that they have been taken by family members and friends here in the Kansas City area. So right now, what the great need is people willing to take either single or family Africans from the war-torn areas, because there's several African countries where there's internal turmoil and civil war. So I really kind of need to know if people are wanting to wait for an Afghan family, or would you like to take an African family instead?
So do we have any information about the language that the
No, I don't even know what
They're from
countries
Congo, I
would be.
think they speak French.
What?
They're from Congo, I think they speak French.
Some places they do, and then, they speak the different, African dialects, but I think it's mainly, what you say, it's the Congo, and it's also the Sudan, where there's a lot of problems. As far as I know, I talked to some Nigerians today, and they're willing, to help with maybe some singles that, I get passed out some of my cards today and asked them, would they please take the message to their churches and, and see if maybe they would be, willing, especially when I guess I'm getting the picture that maybe some of these men are coming ahead of the, the families come here and get established in single families. So,
I wonder if the Jewish Community Center or JVS could help us pay for interpreters.
JVS doesn't help. JVS is on the way. They're supposed to help.
Maybe the most help would be Linda Zemke's organization with the interpreters, and then also Delacy Lamb that's at 500 Woodland, and then also Don Bosco.
Oh, yeah.
They help with, they help with interpreters. And then if it's any of the, any of them come from Nigeria, I have, my own interpreters from Urdu and some of the other, remote languages. And that's what I tried to establish today.
Joyce?
Yes.
Is are the folks at Second Presbyterian Church, okay with?
I think they're good. I think they're talking to their congregations to see, do they want to wait? Or, there's a need, there's a need and it's there now. There just needs to find out if we can get, more, clear information.
So
I didn't know.
at the moment, we don't know whether they will or won't be working with us, and if we go for an African.
Oh, yeah, the Jewish Vocational Services is so responsible for them too. They're getting people.
No, I'm talking about the Second Presbyterian.
Oh, I think I'm sure.
apologize to those
I mean,
on
I
Zoom.
got the sense that they will.
You
Yeah.
can't hear the discussion going on about our efforts to take care of refugees that come into Kansas City. And I'm sorry that the microphone doesn't pick them up.
Yeah, I know, they said they would.
Yeah, there will. They were asking how we thought our congregation would react to it.
And I said, as long as they know how to make biryani, no.
Yeah, that's his only requirement is that they make ethnic food for him.
Right,
He sells out cheap.
basically.
So we need to think about, what we want to do. Do we want to wait for an Afghan family, or do we want to go ahead and take whoever's greatest need the soonest? And find out, are any of these families are all these single, men from African nations, or, exactly what, because they don't really know exactly what they're getting until they basically, they're lucky if they get 48 hours notice about, who's coming, what the situation is. So you don't have much of a turnaround time. That's why we need to really start stocking up, storing up, so we'll be ready to, to make change, stop on a dime and make change, basically. We've got a marvelous storage area. I don't know if you saw it, Rabbi, but it's really nice and it's clean. And we'd be able to see exactly what we, what we had in there. So I have a list of everything that we would need for a family of 6. That's what I was working off of. But, of course, if we have too much, we can always save that, for the next time. It won't go to waste.
That we're restoring the family.
No.
It seems to
Put a
me,
family in there. It's a really much.
Over dinner, I'll tell you more stories about housing.
it seems to me that in general, we need direction.
I think the direction is that if we have stuff to give to these people, we should begin storing it and just wait. And then you move. Okay, Denise is telling me to move on, and I'm afraid of her. So let's conclude the service with.
En Kelohenu, 423.
Hit it.
Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshiachenu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshiachenu.
In concluding our service, ask God's blessings upon us. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless us and keep us. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, may God look kindly on us and ever be gracious to us. Yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yasemecha shalom. May God show us tenderness and give us shalom and peace. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom to all of you who joined us on Zoom. Thank you very much. Shabbat shalom. Now, we're gonna leave this system here. Could somebody else move the TV back to the CD room? Because I want to try and get this microphone to work.
Adios, people.